change. How do people cope with it? How do people react to it? And now that everything seems to be changing around us, what should you do dealing with change? As the coronavirus pandemic continues to affect the country and schemes such as furlough are starting to come to an end, and we're seeing more and more news reports about increased redundancies, etc., and Brexit and all sorts of other things. The only thing that is predictable at the moment is unpredictable change. So there's important things you need to consider about how this might affect your life. How do people cope with change? Well, there are two main ways that people cope with change. Firstly, there is a thing called escape coping, which is avoidance. We just stick our fingers in our ears and we just close our eyes and we hope that everything will be okay. We avoid any change if we can. We just go to bed and hope that by the time we wake up in the morning, everything will have sorted itself out. This is not a great plan, as you've probably worked out for yourself. What you can find if you do escape coping is that by the time you are forced to act, your options may be very limited or even disappeared completely, so I wouldn't recommend it. Much more positive is the second way we can deal with it, which is called control coping. Control coping is where we assess what's going on in our lives, we look at what's happening around us, and we come up with a plan. So we'll talk about that later in the video. How do people react to change? Sudden change can be quite a disturbing thing for most people, and we tend to go through 4 predictable stages when it happens to us. First step one, is shock and disbelief. We can often just sit there and go, whoa, this is far too dramatic. I don't think this is really happening, is it? And we have a tendency to sit there and wait and not act because we just can't cope with it. It's just too much, a bit of sensory overload. Apparently when the planes hit at 9/11, they know from the IT records there was quite a lot of people waited until their computers had shut down before they evacuated. And that lost time for some of them was the difference between life and death. It's quite common in emergency situations for people, because they don't believe that it's actually happening, to just sit there and wait and see what everyone else is doing first. That's valuable time that you can't afford to waste. Now hopefully you're not in that kind of an emergency situation, but understand that that first step is difficult to get over, that shock. Wow, look at this, what's happening. Even if you've thought you were secure and then suddenly your world gets turned upside down. Step 2 that most people go through after shock and disbelief is anger and an emotional response. People can get very strong emotional response and angry about the situation. Why is this happening to me? This is not fair. I shouldn't have to go through this. And again, that's a human response. It's perfectly understandable. But if we're not careful, that can drag out and that can take a lot of our energy that we need to use to actually deal with the situation. Step 3 is coming to terms with things, some level of acceptance, when you actually start to realize this is real, this is happening, and you are going to have to do something. It's important we get to that step as quickly as possible, and get through those first 2 steps quickly so we can start doing something productive, something positive, and we can get ahead of the game, if you like. Because step 4 is about moving forwards. It's about looking at, okay, if this is my situation, what are my options and how can I move on? Let's look at what you should do if you're faced with sudden change. What should you do? Well, obviously this will vary wildly depending on what your situation is and what kind of change it is that you're facing. But there are 4 steps that I would recommend for you. Step 1, assess the situation. What is happening and what are your choices? So when you're looking at what's happening, try and avoid wild speculation and rumours and opinions. Try and look for evidence, look for facts, look for what's actually happening. Be sensible and be honest with yourself, okay? And maybe a little bit pessimistic. What's the worst case scenario here if it all goes wrong? When you're looking at yourself, weigh up your options. Now, there are always options. You get people in there say, I haven't got any options. We all have choices. They might not be great choices, but you do have choices. So look at that. Look at what you can do. Try and focus on the positive. What can you do rather than what you can't do? Once you've done that and you feel you've got an idea and a grip of what's happening around you, step 2 is develop a plan. So pull that together, all that information, and then also pull in as much as you can what help and support is available to you. And there are things out there if you look for them. So maybe you need to do a bit of research, but find out what help there is. Look at how much time you've possibly got available to you and get your plan together. Step 3 is probably the most important, but most obvious, but often the most hardest step is act. Do something. Put your plan into operation. It's quite common for people to just come up with a plan or an idea of what they understand what's happening. They've got an idea of what they can do, and then they sit back to see what happens first. Don't wait. You need to get ahead of the crowd. You need to use what little time you've got effectively. So put your plan into operation. Do something. And step 4 really ties into that, which is get out of your comfort zone. We tend to live our lives within the same and similar routines and environments and situations on a daily basis that we do all the time, and we're comfortable with that. We know the people, we know the situations, we know the places, and this is the comfort zone that we live in. If you stay in that comfort zone, nothing changes. For you to adapt and change to suit the changing circumstances, you have to get out of your comfort zone, and by the very definition of that, it is uncomfortable. It is a painful thing to do. You might have to learn new skills. You might have to go to new places. You might have to talk to new people. You might have to do new things. And that's always a difficult thing to do at the beginning. But you need to push yourself, okay? Push yourself and realize I've got to get out of my comfort zone if I want to change. Summary. So this is a very short video. Obviously it's a very important subject, but with the situation in the country at the moment and with the virus and with redundancies and all the rest of it, change is happening to all of us at some level or another. So the biggest piece of advice I can give you is do not just sit there and let it happen to you. Look at what's happening in your situation, come up with a plan and do something. Act. Don't wait until you hit the iceberg. Don't wait until everything goes wrong. Okay, that's too late. Get on with it. And the last piece of advice I would give you on that is please don't be afraid to ask for help. If you're looking at what your options are and you think these aren't great, I'm not really sure what I can do with what I've got available to me, you need help, and we all need help from time to time. So ask, look for the people who can help you, hunt them out, and ask for the support and the help that's available. If we are talking about employment and jobs and you live in the Stockport area, then there is Stockport Homes has an excellent employment team. I'll put their contact details up at the end of this video. Get in touch, just tell them my situation is looking a bit dodgy. I could do with some advice. Advice is a great first step. Just have a chat to them. It's available to anybody in Stockport if you're looking for work. Other than that, please act. Please don't wait. Get on with it. And best of luck. Stay safe. And until next time, goodbye.